Hi, welcome to another lecture brought to you by Prosperity Lounge. Today what we're going to be doing is what I like to call PTSD. It's a basic structure for understanding how to pass your exams and manage your life. Basically what it stands for is planning, time or timeline, stress and skeleton, and disorganization. Or, if you do not follow it, it stands for post-traumatic stress disorder, which is what you have after your exam if one does not follow the methodology. When tackling a question, one of the most fundamental things you can ever do is to plan your question. What that means is spending a few minutes before each question reading the question. First, going to the required in the question so one understands what one is looking for in the question. Then, going to the question. When going in through the question itself, through the information, writing down various points, marking what one needs. If the question asks us to calculate, I don't know, let's say, do the intercompany journals, it's then marking through the points that highlight for us which journals one requires, and those details. Our second thing, which I said, is time management and timeline. Time management in one's own life, which is important. It's taking up enough time to actually have a social life, and time for studies, and then also within an exam, managing one's time within an exam. If a question takes 50 minutes, that is spending 50 minutes on the question and not spending an hour and a half on the question so that one runs out of time for the next questions and therefore failing the paper. Another aspect that's important for passing the exam is timelines. Timelines are very important as they help us to actually understand the question, and it forms part of planning a question. A good example of this is where one has a group question. It's in essence drawing up a timeline that looks something like this. We mark off our various year ends. Let's assume 31st of the 2nd, 2010 and 31st of the 2nd, 2011. Assume we have an intercompany transaction with PPE, an intercompany transaction of inventory. We can mark off the various dates. Assume that inventory was sold off at July 01, 07, 2010. We would therefore know, or should I say, sort of rephrase that to say the machine was sold, we would therefore know how many months depreciation to adjust for. Same as with, let's assume inventory was only sold in this year, we would know not to adjust for an opening balance. No opening balance adjustment, but we would know that there is a closing balance adjustment and our journals would be correct. Timelines, very important. Our next aspect, skeletons and stress management. Stress management, very important in a paper. If one panics at the beginning of a paper, you can say goodbye to your time in the paper, because you'll sit and stress for 15 to 20 minutes in a 50-minute question, and with a half an hour left to finish the paper, you'll stress even further and you can say goodbye to that question. Stress management in your life is very important as well, because if you sit and stress in your life, you'll simply procrastinate about when you're going to work, and you'll most likely not work. Skeletons. Skeletons, very important in planning your question. When you start every question, most questions in accounts look the same. If you look at most of your group questions, they generally ask for the same thing. They ask you to drop a group income statement, a group balance sheet, a group statement of changes in owner's equity. They ask you to intercompany journals. When the question asks you to say draw up a group income statement, draw up the group income statement to start off with. Let's go call it revenue. Let's do a simple one. Cost of sales. Now most of your questions generally look the same. We'll just draw these three lines. If you look in the question, there are a lot of easy marks to get. If we draw up our skeleton, we'll generally be able to slot in a lot of the easier marks. We can, so let's call it, we have, let's say, parent A, subsidiary B. Right? They already have, let's call it revenue of 100 and revenue of 50. We can automatically slot in the 100 plus the 50, and we've most likely probably scored already an easy mark. That's one mark down, and all that took us was about 10, not even, should I say, 5 seconds to do that. All that for one mark. Now most likely this question was out of 22 marks, and you already basically scored 5% of the paper. We know there was most likely in any group question there's always an intercompany journal, and you'd easily be able to score that mark because that's quite an easy mark. Assume they sold 10 rands worth of inventory, you minus the 10, and boom, you've already scored another half a mark, another mark, and you've got 10% for the paper. Very important to draw skeletons because you can easily see what you need, and you can shoot in a lot of easy marks first, and then later tackle the difficult marks, which is normally the intercompany journals and so on and so forth. The last thing that is very, very important, and this is one of the most important things if you ever want to pass a paper and you want to pass life. So I call it disorganization. It is very important in your life to be organized, right? On top of which, right, do not have a disorganized accounting paper. I myself, having tutored and marked university papers, having lectured, one of the worst things you want to see as a marker, and think of this from your own perspective, if you're sitting at 12 o'clock at night or 1 o'clock at night, you do not want to be that person in the sample that comes up at 1 o'clock at night. Because a lecturer who sees a disorganized paper at 1 o'clock at night, no matter whether you scored the marks, or let's assume you're that person who never really scored the marks, but were the lecturer marking you at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, you're the first paper, he would give you the benefit of the doubt. At 1 o'clock at night, you will not get the benefit of the doubt. If you were neat, maybe you get the benefit of the doubt. 1 o'clock at night, you're getting nothing. Have a disorganized paper, and you most likely will fail. I hope you've enjoyed this lecture, and I wish you guys the best of luck. If you'd like to see anything more, please visit my site www.prosperitylounge.co.za. Best of luck for everything, guys.